Hello, everybody, and welcome to my OB-X8 review. To skip past me talking about the synthesizer, fast forward to the time mentioned above. When the OB-X8 was first announced, I didn't think I was going to pick it up. I'm so happy with the Prophet 10. I figured, well, I just don't need it. I went into a local music store and started demoing the synth, and I couldn't stop playing it. And I realized it was the characteristic Oberheim sound that I had been searching for. I'm going to get this right out of the way and say that the Oberheim filter is my favorite synthesizer filter. And the Oberheim OB-X8 is hands down my favorite synthesizer of all time. There's something so lush and inviting about the filter. It's a very musical synthesizer. The Prophet 10 is incredible and a totally different sound. But an example of the difference between the filter types is that on the Prophet 10, if you crank the resonance all the way up and do a filter sweep, you could pop some eardrums. It's very piercing, very harsh, but that's one of the characteristics of that filter type. Well, for Oberheim, even the 4-pole version of the OB-X8 filter is still sweet and subtle. It doesn't self-resonate like other filter types that are more well-known. I'm going to start out by reading the letter from Tom Oberheim, or rather, the first page of the manual. This is how we got here. The story of the OB-X8 is a story that has its beginnings back in 1978. It's a story of innovation and competition, loss and gain, friends made and friends lost, and most of all, about the power and value of collaboration. The original OB-X was developed as a response to the introduction of the sequential circuits, Prophet 5. What followed was a fierce but friendly competition that resulted in the OB-X8, OB-8, and several other Oberheim instruments that helped shape the sound of an era, and that are still loved and used today. Jump ahead 40 years, both companies have been reborn, and a decades-long friendship with Dave Smith has resulted in the synth which now sits in front of you, the OB-X8. Along the way, the crew at Sequential and Oberheim alumni, such as Marcus Ryle, who co-designed the OB-X8, breathed new life into the original OB concept and created an instrument that has captured and embodied the heart, soul, and every nuance of the original OB series. More importantly, it combines the voice architectures of the original OB series synths in a way that gives you new sounds and new capabilities that even the originals didn't have. We think it's going to satisfy even the most die-hard Oberheim fans and introduce an entirely new generation to the Oberheim sound. Best of all, the OB-X8 is a testament to the power of friendship, a mutual love of music and synths, and in the end, the good things that can happen when good people dedicate their lives to making good instruments. Now go make some music. Signed by Tom Oberheim himself. So yeah, this is like having every analog polyphonic Oberheim synth that you've ever wanted in one instrument. You're getting 6 filter types right out of the gate. I'm going to start off with my favorites, the SEM filters. You're getting the 2-pole state variable, high pass, band pass, and notch, and 3 separate filters. All 3 of those are the SEM filters. You're getting the OB-X 2-pole variable low pass. You're getting the OB-X8 2-pole CEM 3320 low pass, and the XA 4-pole CEM 3320 low pass. And they all sound beautiful, and they all sound different. You're getting multiple envelope types. You're getting the envelope of the OB-8 and the OB-X and OB-X8. As noted, all 3 legacy synthesizers utilized the CEM 3310 chip for the filter and amplifier envelopes. The attack time on the OB-8 has a more linear shape than on the OB-X8, even though they both use the CEM 3310. in use, you may hear a more exponential curve on the OB-X/XA, and I definitely hear it. For sound banks, you're getting all the original sounds of the OB-XS, OB-X, OB-8, and OB-X8. Modulation, you have a vibrato LFO, and you also have a dedicated LFO. So the LFOs that come with the OB-X8 are sine, square, and sample and hold. You can combine the square and sample and hold to create other unusual types of low-frequency oscillator modulations. The vintage knob on the OB-X8 is not as harsh as on the Prophet 5 Rev 4. It's not as ghastly when you crank it all the way up. I feel the vintage knob is dialed in a much more subtle manner, especially in regards to detuning. You can crank the vintage knob all the way up on the OB-X8 and still use the patch to make music with other players. The key bed is just as good as any other sequential synthesizer. It's a 61 key FITAR key bed with aftertouch and velocity. There's lots of extra bells and whistles. Like, it has an arpeggiator. It's a nice arpeggiator. It has a screen on it, which I find very helpful. And instead of the pitch and mod wheels, it has what's called levers. Some people call them paddles or whittle sticks, but the official Oberheim terminology is levers. I didn't think I would like the levers. I really didn't, but when I'm using it and playing it, it feels great. It's a totally different way to attack the modulation. I could go with either wheels or levers at this point. So the levers work really well for me, and of course you can edit them and change them, their polarity and all that. I'm not going to go over every feature, but I want to talk a little bit about page 2. When I first saw the synth, I got to admit I was a little confused, or maybe even disappointed about page 2. The last thing I wanted to do was menu dive on a vintage recreation or reissue of a synthesizer. I quickly got over it once I used it. It's very intuitive. Right now there's 41 different parameters, and it's very deep what you can do. You can assign, for instance, an OB-8 envelope while using an OB-X filter type. You can key track the LFO to get that polymodulation type of effect that you get on the Prophet 10, Prophet 5. You can spread out the voices in different ways. You can allocate how many voices spread out with the LFO. You can invert the phases of the envelopes. It's very, very deep, and I've only scratched the surface. I've had the synthesizer for about a week now, and I've already made roughly 30 sounds on it. I have to say the presets on this synth are like the best I've ever heard from either sequential or any other synthesizer that I've bought in recent years. The presets are absolutely outstanding, and I'm going to keep most of them. And that's another advantage of the OB-X8. You have 640 patch locations that you can actually overwrite each and every single one. So you're not stuck with factory patches. Certain convenient functions like key tracking amount, noise amount that you have to dig into page 2 to access. For me, it wasn't a game changer or a deal breaker. The Oberheim sound is the most inspiring synth timbres that I've ever played around with. It just puts me in the zone every time I play this thing. You can tell this was a real labor of love.